Hello and welcome to Expert Matters. Today we have Vipul Paliwal, a global business psychologist specializing in leadership advisory, executive assessment, and talent strategy. With a master's in business and work in psychology, he is a certified expert in psychometric tools. Vipul is also a founder of All Things IO and driving the growth of industrial organizational psychology in India. Let's dive into his insights on leadership, psychology, and business strategy. Vipul, thank you so much for taking our time for us. Thank you so much for coming to Expert Matters.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for inviting me.
I would just want to understand your journey for our viewers first. My first question is about your journey.
Okay, so I come from a small town called Udaipur in Rajasthan. Okay, early when I was growing, I was interested in science and bio. Uh, During my education and preparation for medical examination, I visited Kota, which is called the Center of Studies, right? And that is when I first strike to me that not everyone is made to do the same things. Everyone has a different behavior, different competencies, and everyone has some uniqueness to them. Then why everyone is going towards the same medical examinations, becoming a doctor, becoming a mainstream engineer, right? And that's where my curiosity towards understanding human behavior, okay, about potential, about the uniqueness of human, our first came in, and I couldn't crack the medicals, so I opted for psychology. And that's why my journey with psychology started, and I did my bachelor's in psychology. I learned about the human behavior, counseling, therapy, research, statistics during my early times. And my interest then become more divergent in terms of thinking about the application of psychology beyond the clinical lens, right? I started seeing how I can apply psychology to various other settings. I think that led me to business psychology, and I then opted for pursuing my master's in business and work psychology from Aston Business School in United Kingdom, and that's where I got the exposure in the first time in terms of how I can apply psychology into the business settings. During that time, I got my exposure in psychometrics, assessments, learning and development, performance, leadership. Strategic human resources are few of the areas where I first got an exposure, right? So that's how my journey has been started. And then after that, I somehow landed into the world of psychometrics. Coming with the background psychology, I was very interested in how I can maximize human potential, right? And then I started thinking how I can do that. But before you maximize any potential of any human, you must need to understand in terms of how humans operate, right? It's very essential to assess them. Now, if we have to assess them, then we need to know about what to assess, right? So I entered into the world of psychometrics, and then psychometrics leading me into the world of leadership assessment and development. So that's a nutshell about my journey so far.
Amazing, amazing. So you have experienced all bits of your journey, and I think you've learned a lot, trying and testing a lot of careers as well.
Mhm.
My second question to you would be very simple. You have an expertise in business psychology, which is very
Mhm.
rare in Indian industry. Can you help
Mhm.
us understand how psychology impacts and influence business?
Okay, so first of all, the term is different, but it do exist in India in varied forms and shapes, right? Often senior leaders are also having the tons of experiences apply psychology strategy into HR, into operations, into strategy, into various other facets of any business unit, right? So, you know, if we talk about the application of business psychology and its impact, right? So first thing we need to understand is what are we actually trying to do with the application of business psychology, right? Like what would happen if I apply any psychological principle? What would it benefit, right? So if we talk specifically about business psychology, it comes in the space of enhancing the leadership assessment and development, right? Enhancing the overall organization development, enhancing the capabilities, enhancing the behavioral competencies. So the application of business psychology is very good, right, in nature. If Do you want me to give any specific example with the question, or if there is any other question on top of that?
That would be great if you can just help us with an example.
Okay. So you tell me about like what do you want to know in this? Like what is something that you want to investigate in terms of how this works? Tell me.
I think how do psychometric assessment they influence leadership selection and development is
Okay.
one of the most important questions in our industry.
Okay, all right. So, Shruti, we need to understand first that, in order to select a leader for any company, it's going to be a very critical thing, right? Why? Because the leaders are going to handle the P&L, right? The top line. They're going to handle portfolios of, hundreds of crores. So it's very
Correct.
important to select a right leader. And not importantly that the leaders are someone whom everyone should aspire to look after or to follow them, right? So he must be someone who also looks to the business side of the things, but at the people side of the things, right? Now, in order to select the right leader, right, there is this decision-making process that happens, right? And to enhance our decision-making process, we use psychometric assessments at various levels to understand the underlying elements of a leader. Okay, I'll give you one example. Okay, the first thing we need to understand is what's the capability of a leader's ability to solve any problem. Okay, so we are measuring the critical thinking ability or problem solving ability. That's where we use cognitive test, right? Then we talk about the personality of a leader. Is the leader's personality is a balance of being authoritative as well as democratic in nature, right? Can he, assign tasks to people at the same time encourage them, right? So you need to understand the personality of leader, whether the leaders can flex their personality or not. So you use psychometric assessment which measures the personality. So the best in the tools like Hogan is there, Lumina is there, right? So these tools, these psychometric tools, what they do is they add, they enhance our decision making capabilities, right? In order for us to select the right leader. So like this is a very simple example I could give, right? Understanding the dynamic of how dynamic a leader is, psychometric tools basically help, the leaders or the decision makers, they enhance their decision making process. Now that is not everything, right? So it's important to remember that this is just a tool, right? That enhances our decision making as well as reduces our bias. Okay, so that at the end of the day, we are selecting the right leaders for the right position. Okay,
Okay,
does
understood.
that help?
And
Yeah.
it does actually, because I think a lot of talent acquisition specialists and a lot of young recruiters who are entering the industry as an HR professional, they how can they effectively integrate these psychometric tools, because talent acquisition as a management is could be something very small, but at the same time the management strategies could be a whole new world. So how does that help in talent acquisition?
Okay. So, see, with regards to the talent acquisition, I think what is important is what is the purpose of hiring any particular talent, right? Now, the talent acquisition leaders could, do a great friendship with any sort of psychometric tools that is relevant to their business challenges. Okay. So, for example, I could give you, let's say if there is a company which is hiring for at a large scale, let's say they have to hire 100 graduates from a engineering college. Okay. Now the talent acquisition person might have hundreds of profile and he or she might not be able to, swiftly go through all of them. That's where they can use a pre-screening test. Okay. They can integrate in their, systems or policies or procedures and, can filter out the candidates basis the requirement, right? So what are we doing here? How are talent acquisition professionals using the psychometrics? They're using a pre-screening, a reliable psychometric tool that basically, let's say in engineering, what we are basically looking is their ability to solve problem, right? So we are just adding a critical thinking psychometric test, or an aptitude test, right? That helps us filter out the tons of candidates. So what are we doing? We are fast tracking our decision making, right? Using a right tool. It basically increases the efficiency of a talent acquisition professional. At the end of the day, it benefits the company, right? So this is one of the examples, I could very, very clearly say. And there are multiple use case of that as well of psychometric tools beyond this.
Correct. Great. I think it's going to transform the future of HR, HR as a entire industry. My
Mhm.
next question to you would be to understand, can you share an example where capability enhancement strategies led to measurable business impact?
Okay. Now, with that question, can you help me understand what do you mean by capability enhancement?
So when you use psychometric assessments and
Mhm.
specific tools for leadership hiring, or maybe
Mhm.
for entire HR transformation to hire better, to make decision making better, how does it help to make measurable business impact?
Okay. Okay. I could give you an example. when we're talking on measurable business impact, that means there are things happening at the top line that impacts in revenue or in any form of P&L, right? Now, often what happens with this, any sort of use case of psychometrics or business psychology, what we are doing is we are measuring the capabilities of leaders, okay? Be it in the form of their leadership style, be it in the form of their communication style, be it in their form of how they manage their teams, right? Or be it in the form of the overall culture of the organization, right? So what business psychology is doing is they are creating, data-driven interventions. Okay. Let's say we are talking about assessments. Now, data-driven assessments, when they occur, what happens is they are the interventions that helps one understand that how their leadership team is looking like, right? What are the strengths of the team? What are the development of the team? And if we look at an aggregate level, we get to understand that, okay, these are the following developmental areas that, let's say, my top line leaders are somehow uh, not assertive in nature. They are not, speaking out front about the performance mandate that is given by the upper management, right? So let's say this is one of the areas of, development that we have identified in the assessment process. Now, what happens is we have identified it via the intervention. Now, once we know about it, then we create a tailored development plan for the leaders. Let's say we give them an assertiveness training, okay, across different verticals or across different situations. Now, that trainings helps those leaders to ensure that their performance targets and their teams deliver as per the mandate. Okay, so if the performance tasks are then met, then at the end of the day, you're increasing your efficiency, you're reducing your turnovers. Okay, and at the end of the day, that impacts the bottom line. So this is one of the measurable impacts, right? Another thing we could use is which is very sensitive in nature is that employee retention is a major issue, right? So often we have the best talent, but the talent doesn't stay in the company, and this cost a lot to the
Correct.
company, right? Now,
Mhm.
how do we ensure that we understand who are the high potentials of the company, right? Who are the high potential employers? How do we manage them? Okay, that once we measure that these are the high potential, how do we manage them? Now, in order to manage them, we need to first understand what they are, what they bring to the table, and what is their sense of belonging. What would be needed in order for them to stay? So we create a tailored development plan for them, right? That meets not only their monetary incentives, but non-monetary incentives, give them a sense of belonging in the company. At the end of the day, what we are doing is we are retaining that employee and we are now then saving the retentions. Okay, we are reducing the turnover or, the attrition rates. And at the end of the day, then it impacts the bottom line. So these are like few of the measurable business impacts. But overall, this is like a cycle. Okay, so intervention take place. Intervention needs to be, designed very tailored as per the business context. Okay, then only it makes sense or it doesn't make any sense, right? I'll take a pause here. I mean, are my examples somehow helpful for you to get understanding on this?
So definitely, definitely. Vipul, because we are talking about insights, what are
Mhm.
some overlooked psychological insights that are significantly impacting business decision making?
Okay, so when you're talking about the overview psychological insights, is there anything in particular you want to know? Can you give me an example on that front so that I
Not
could give
really,
you
just what are the specific measures or what are the major, some of the major overlooked, insights which impact the business decision making, which could have been used better to take a better decision for the leadership.
Okay. So when we're talking about insights, there are multiple sort of insights. There are capability insights, there are behavioral insights, right? Often, any analyst coming from either a background of psychology or not, they're able to analyze multiple spectrums. But where the business psychology comes in the picture is, given their education and their training in understanding the human behavior, they often understand various, underlying elements, under the iceberg elements related to any sort of important decision or strategy. Okay. And they, with their interventions, once they identify, okay, when they identify any sort of behavioral insights or capability insights, then they can, utilize this insight to create an intervention, a positive intervention, right, in order to resolve any sort of challenge or complexity. I can give you an example. Okay. We pick a very simple thing called, let's pick decision making. Okay. Now what happens
Okay.
is in decision making, there are a lot of biases attached, right? Often we say confirmation bias is one. right? We conform
Correct.
to others or the people we like or any senior stakeholders. We are
Mhm.
afraid to speak assertively in front of a senior stakeholder or to challenge them, right? Now, that is one bias that happens. Another bias is, let's say, anchoring bias. What we do is we tend to rely to the most relevant information that has been recently feeded to us, and we anchor and make our decisions basis that, right? Now, these are the insights we get to know that these are the leaders are, making, the biases are coming to the picture, and it's affecting their decision making and ultimately affecting the bottom line, right? Now, these insights are, effectively utilized by psychologists or business psychologists. They leverage these insights and create positive interventions, right, to reduce any sort of biases in decision making, right? So maybe let's say you and I together, we are doing a training to enhance decision making, and where we are helping everyone understand about the common biases and the pitfalls, okay, that generally everyone makes while making a decision. So that training is, helping them in enhancing the decision making, right? And that could be beneficial to them in the long run. Okay, so this is a basic example. You might have heard about what is after the COVID, what is happening is well-being, stress management are again very important topics, right?
Yes.
So what business psychologists are doing is everyone knows, it's very easy to say to manage the stress, but at the same time, due to the mandates, the stress levels are always higher for the senior leaders or any manager, right? Now, how business psychology is playing a role is they're aiding the organization to measure it, right? Okay, we know about, what gets measured, get managed, right? Now, it's very important that we have a scientific process of managing or measuring anything, right? So the psychologists are creating right interventions, let's say in the form of survey, in the form of, let's say, a 360-degree process, let's say in the form of any sort of test that they circulate across the organization. They measure what are the underlying elements of why stress is happening in the first place, right? They understand that, and then they create a tailored, again, intervention to mitigate any sort of issues that are causing a lot of stress. Okay, at an individual level, at a team level, at an organization level, right? So at the end of the day, they are helping to measure what is not easy to measure, right? Right. If you have a number figure, it's very easy to measure, right? So the quant is easy to measure, the qualitative is very difficult to measure. Well-being is very difficult to measure, right? Now that is where the role of business psychologists come in the picture. Okay. Culture is another thing, right? Culture is very difficult to measure, right? That's why the culture advisory is not for everyone. Like not every organization is providing that. Why? Because it requires deep expertise in understanding to measure the qualitative side of the traits or the parameters, right? So I could say these are few of the examples that answers to this question.
Great. So can we say that it also helps to enhance employee engagement and productivity?
Yes, we can definitely say that.
Amazing, amazing, Vipul. I think psychology leveraging in business, I think it's going to change the industrial revolution. Can you just help us understand about your initiative, All Things IO?
Okay, sure. So, as the name, what it says is that all things IO, I stands for industrial, O stands for organizational. So, everything related to industrial organizational psychology is what the foundation is all about, right? I started it 2.5 years ago with the core aim of bringing this field to the forefront in India, right? So, what we are doing here is we're trying to solve three layers of the problems with all things IO, right? First is to promote the field, right? Often when there is a new field, not everyone knows about it. Often there are a lot of misconceptions around it. So what we are trying to do is we are collaborating with institutes across the globe, okay, which are recognized bodies, and then we are deciphering the information into the Indian market about the field. So that's the first layer, which is awareness about the field. The second layer is about its application and use case, right? So since this is a science-based field, right? Now it is very important to help everyone understand about what are its applications, what are its use case, right? How, what happens in the field, what do you get to learn, okay? How you can utilize this, right? How, employee engagement surveys are designed in a scientific way, right? How a psychometric test is built in the first place, and as per the context and the culture of India culture, right? So how do we build a tailored psychometric assessment, right? So the second layer is the application, the use case of the field, right? And the third layer is by utilizing the awareness, the application, overall enhancing the self-awareness of an individual team or an organization, right? So what platforms could be built basis the field or the knowledge of the field? What platforms could be built which could help this decade of Indian employers or employees, right? So it works in both the ways. How we can help this decade of the Indian employees or the employers in enhancing their process in either enhancing the decision making or enhancing their capability to assess, select, manage, and hire humans. How we can, utilize different technologies. What are its roles? So that's the overall aim of what All Things IO is. Currently, we are just on the phase one and second, right? So we are trying to bring the awareness of the field and explaining everyone, going to institutes, giving lectures about its use case and how you can leverage and utilize it. Just like how you asked about how we can integrate psychometric tools for our respective benefits, right? So that's what we are doing with All Things IO.
Amazing. I think it's going to change the industry, as I've already said a lot of times in this interview. My last request, Vipul, is going to be requesting you to please share a piece of advice to the young students and freshers who are watching this video. Something that helps them boost their career in the industry, and something which helps to the students and freshers coming from the psychological background as well as from the non psychological background.
Okay. I think the most important thing is I would not phrase it as an advice, right? I would rather phrase this as something that you could explore. Okay, and that is self-awareness, right? So by understanding yourself first, okay, you're gonna play a significant role for the growth of yourself as well as in within your environment, right? So self-awareness is going to be critical, and you can explore that with the help of business psychology, right? A simple thing I would recommend anyone is to just go and uh, go on Google and just search about a free personality test. Give the test, get to know about yourself. Okay, see how much that you can relate to. Okay, ask few of your colleagues to share feedback about your communication style. Right, ask few of your mentors about what are your areas of development. Right, now this all would come under the umbrella of self-awareness. Right, so with the help of this field, you could with the help of the field of the psychology itself, you could enhance your self-awareness of yourself, of others, as well as how the human environment work overall, right? Now that is going to be significantly helpful for you throughout your journey, right? So there is no particular specific skill set. This field is more about exploring about self, about others, about organizations, right? So that is something that I would definitely recommend. No matter what role you're going to be, your self-awareness about yourself is going to play a critical role about it, right? So three layers of self-awareness, I think, going to be significantly helpful. One is at the inner level, right? Then you understand about what your surroundings are, how you have grown, how the environment has impacted you. And the third thing is wherever you're working, right? Say, the graduates, the intelligent graduates, they might be working on top, companies. So they must understand that environment as well, right? So the awareness around that. I think that is going to be very helpful for any sort of progression, advancement, or innovation, right? So that is something that I would recommend everyone to explore. Now, that is not my advice, it's just that you can explore this.
Great. I think your expertise in executive assessment and organizational development plus business psychology, it overall highlights the power of data-driven decision making in the business. So, what I could take for is it was a very thought-provoking session for me on psychology-driven leadership and talent strategy. So, I think a lot of young recruiters and talent acquisition professionals who are still working quantitatively, but they would start focusing on qualitative measures as well now. Thank you so much, Vipul. Amazing session. Great learnings, great piece of advice. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Shruti.
To all our viewers, stay tuned for more expert conversations on expert matters. Until next time, see you. Take care.